Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is checking their phone for the fifth time in 10 minutes. Someone is replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, trying to figure out whether that smile meant something or nothing. Someone is wondering if they should send a message, wait for a message, or pretend they don't care about the message they desperately want. And while all of that feels very modern, here's a strange question. Would a human living 100,000 years ago have understood exactly how you feel? Not the phone part, not the texting, not the social media stalking, the feeling, the nervous anticipation, the obsession, the fear, the hope. Because if you strip away all the technology, all the culture, all the modern nonsense we've built around dating, you're left with something much older, something ancient, something that existed long before cities, long before money, long before writing, and maybe even before language itself. Love. Or at least the first version of it. And the story of how ancient humans fell in love is far more fascinating than most people realize. Because for most of human history, love wasn't a luxury. It was survival. Let's rewind several million years. Imagine a world with no houses, no roads, no governments, no schools, no hospitals, just endless wilderness, predators everywhere, food uncertainty every day. One bad decision could kill you. One injury could end your life. This was the reality for our distant ancestors. And yet, even in that brutal environment, something remarkable started happening. Humans began choosing specific people. Not just mating, choosing. And that distinction changes everything. Many animals reproduce. Very few form the kind of emotional bonds humans do. A male lion doesn't spend years wondering whether a female lion truly understands him. A crocodile isn't composing emotional poetry. A zebra isn't lying awake at night questioning mixed signals. Humans are different. And scientists think that difference began emerging surprisingly early. One clue comes from our bodies. If you compare highly competitive primates like gorillas, males are enormous compared to females. The dominant male controls access to mates. Competition is physical, violent, direct. But humans don't show that same extreme difference. Human males are larger on average, but not dramatically larger. And that's important, because across the animal kingdom, species with smaller size differences often rely more on pair bonding than pure dominance. In other words, our ancestors weren't simply fighting over mates. They were increasingly forming relationships. Not perfect relationships, not modern relationships, but relationships. The biological foundations were being laid. And that may have changed the entire future of our species. Now here's where things get interesting. About 1.8 million years ago, humans started doing something that seems ordinary today but was revolutionary at the time. Sharing food. Specifically, bringing food to particular individuals. Think about what that means. Imagine you're a hunter living hundreds of thousands of years before civilization. Finding food isn't easy. Every hunt is dangerous. Every calorie matters. Every risk could be fatal. Yet after spending hours searching, tracking, and carrying food, you don't consume everything yourself. You bring some of it back. And not necessarily to the entire group, sometimes to one specific person, one specific family, one specific partner. From an evolutionary perspective, that's a huge investment. Resources equal survival. Giving resources away only makes sense if that relationship matters very deeply. This behavior appears repeatedly throughout human history, and it may represent one of the earliest recognizable expressions of affection. Not flowers, not chocolates, not love letters. Food. The original "I thought about you today." The original "I wanted to bring you something." The original romantic gesture. And honestly, considering the danger involved, carrying meat across predator-filled landscapes might be more romantic than buying flowers. Now let's talk about attraction, because ancient humans absolutely cared about attractiveness. Maybe not in exactly the same way we do today, but they cared a lot. Around 100,000 years ago, evidence begins appearing across multiple regions showing something extraordinary. Humans started decorating themselves. Shell necklaces, colored pigments, carved beads, body paint. Decorative objects with no survival value whatsoever. And that creates a fascinating mystery. Why would someone living in a harsh, prehistoric environment spend precious time creating jewelry? Why invest energy into appearance when survival is already difficult? The answer is surprisingly familiar, because appearance matters. Not just physically, socially, symbolically, psychologically. The psychology barely changed. We're still trying to say the same thing. Notice me. I matter. I have value. I'd like you to see me. And maybe the most beautiful part is this. Some ancient decorative objects traveled enormous distances, hundreds of kilometers, far beyond what one person could reasonably travel alone, which means they were exchanged, gifted, passed between people. Think about that. Somewhere tens of thousands of years ago, a human received a rare object that somebody specifically chose for them. A gift. Not because it was necessary, because it meant something. The first meaningful present. The first treasured keepsake. The first prehistoric version of, I saw this and thought of you. Now let's destroy one of the biggest myths about ancient romance. The idea that prehistoric relationships were simply brute force. Biggest man wins. Strongest person dominates. Everyone else loses. Reality was far more complicated. Human children are extraordinarily difficult to raise. Compared to other animals, human babies are practically unfinished at birth. A newborn human cannot walk, cannot feed itself, cannot protect itself, cannot survive independently. For years. Not weeks, not months. Years. That creates a unique challenge. One parent alone struggles. Two cooperating parents perform much better. This changes mate selection dramatically. Strength remains valuable, but reliability becomes even more valuable. Think about it. If raising children requires years of effort, who becomes attractive? Not merely the strongest person, the dependable person, the person who stays, the person who contributes, the person who helps, the person who can be trusted tomorrow, next month, next year. And suddenly, attraction becomes more than physical. It becomes emotional, behavioral, relational. Ancient humans weren't only looking for good genes. They were looking for good partners. That's where something fascinating begins emerging. Attachment. The desire for one specific individual. Not just a potential mate. Not just a useful ally. One person. And if you've ever fallen deeply in love, you know exactly what that feels like. So the next time you find yourself overthinking a message, or wondering whether somebody likes you, or feeling that strange combination of excitement and terror that appears whenever you genuinely care about someone, remember this. You are participating in one of humanity's oldest traditions. Older than kingdoms, older than agriculture, older than writing, maybe older than language itself. Somewhere in the distant past, beside a fire under a sky untouched by city lights, another human felt something remarkably similar. They didn't have the same words, they didn't have the same world, but they had the same heart, the same uncertainty, the same hope, the same desire to be chosen. And across hundreds of thousands of years, through ice ages, migrations, disasters, and civilizations, that feeling survived. Not because it was weak, because it was powerful enough to survive everything. Which might be the most incredible thing about love. Not that humans invented it, but that it helped invent us.